Right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. Okay? I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
What if Canada's next big national security crisis doesn't start in Ottawa, Washington, or even Beijing, but in the frozen silence of the Arctic? That's the twist few people are talking about. While the world is distracted by elections, wars, and trade fights, the real pressure point is moving north, fast, and Canada is standing right in the middle of it. For years, the Arctic was treated like a distant, frozen afterthought, vast, quiet, and politically boring. That era is over. Today, the Arctic is one of the most strategically valuable regions on Earth, and Canada's position there is suddenly under the microscope. What changed? Greenland, and more importantly, the renewed American interest in it. When U.S. political figures openly revived talk about Greenland's strategic value, many people laughed it off as rhetoric. But in Ottawa, the reaction was very different. Canada didn't hear a joke, it heard an alarm bell. Because Greenland isn't just about Denmark or the United States. It sits at the crossroads of Arctic shipping routes, military radar systems, rare earth minerals, and future energy corridors. Any shift in control, influence, or militarization there reshapes the entire Arctic balance, including Canada's own sovereignty. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Canada controls one of the largest Arctic territories in the world, yet it has historically underinvested in defending and projecting power there. Melting ice is opening new sea routes faster than policies can keep up. What used to be impassable ice is now navigable water for longer parts of the year. That means more ships, more military presence, more surveillance, and more competition. The U.S. sees the Arctic as a frontline security zone. Russia already treats it like one. China calls itself a near-Arctic state and is investing heavily in polar infrastructure. And Canada is trying to catch up while insisting on rules, diplomacy, and international law. That's where the tension quietly builds. Canada strongly supports Denmark's sovereignty over Greenland and emphasizes that borders and territories cannot be reshaped by pressure or power politics. On the surface, that sounds obvious, but beneath it lies a deeper concern. If norms start bending in the Arctic, Canada could be next in line to face challenges over its own northern claims, especially the Northwest Passage. Canada has always maintained that the Northwest Passage is internal Canadian water. The United States has never fully agreed, viewing it instead as an international strait. As Arctic ice melts, this legal disagreement moves from theory to reality. More traffic means more disputes. More disputes mean more pressure. This is why Greenland matters so much to Canada. It's not just about a nearby island. It's about precedent, about whether Arctic governance is driven by cooperation or by whoever shows up with the biggest fleet and the most advanced technology. There's also the military angle, rarely discussed openly, but impossible to ignore. NORAD, the Joint Canada-U.S. Aerospace Defense System, depends heavily on Arctic radar and early warning capabilities. Modernizing those systems costs billions. Canada has committed to upgrades, but critics argue the pace is too slow for how fast the Arctic is changing. If the U.S. feels exposed in the north, it won't wait patiently. And then there's the human side of the Arctic, Indigenous communities who live with the consequences of every strategic decision. Increased military presence, shipping traffic, and resource exploration all affect local ecosystems and ways of life. Canada positions itself as a protector of Indigenous rights, which adds another layer of complexity when balancing security demands with social responsibility. This is where Canada's approach sharply contrasts with more aggressive global players. Ottawa is pushing for Arctic diplomacy, multilateral agreements, and stability. The message is clear: the Arctic should not become the next global battlefield. But diplomacy only works when everyone agrees to play by the same rules, and history suggests that strategic regions rarely stay peaceful once their value explodes. The real twist? Canada may soon face a choice it has tried to avoid for decades: remain a quiet Arctic steward or step up as a hard power Arctic actor. That doesn't necessarily mean confrontation, but it does mean spending more, asserting more, and speaking more clearly about red lines. The Arctic is no longer frozen in time. It's warming, opening, and attracting attention at a pace that makes traditional politics look slow and outdated. Greenland is the symbol, not the story. The story is Canada's northern future, and whether it's being shaped by Canadian decisions or by everyone else's ambitions. This isn't tomorrow's issue. It's already happening, and the ice is melting faster than the excuses. Before we end, here's the part most people don't want to admit. Canada is running out of time to stay neutral in the Arctic story. What once felt like a slow burn issue has turned into a fast-moving reality, and the decisions made in the next few years could define Canada's global position for decades. One of the biggest challenges Canada faces is credibility. It's easy to say the Arctic must remain peaceful, cooperative, and rules-based. It's much harder to convince major powers of that vision when infrastructure on the ground or on the ice doesn't fully match the ambition. Ports are limited, icebreakers are few, surveillance gaps still exist. In a region where visibility and presence matter as much as treaties, absence sends its own message. At the same time, Canada doesn't want to become something it isn't. Unlike other powers, Canada's identity in global politics has long been built around mediation, stability, and multilateral cooperation. Turning the Arctic into a heavily militarized zone would contradict that image, and could even escalate tensions Canada is trying to reduce. This balancing act is becoming increasingly fragile. What makes the situation more complicated is the US-Canada relationship itself. Allies don't always agree, especially when strategic interests overlap. The Arctic exposes those fault lines. While both countries cooperate through NORAD and NATO, their interpretations of Arctic waterways, sovereignty, and freedom of navigation still differ. These disagreements have been manageable in the past because the Arctic was inaccessible. Climate change has changed that equation entirely. And then there's Russia. Despite global sanctions and political isolation, Russia remains the most militarized Arctic power. Its bases, icebreakers, and missile systems are already in place. Any shift by the US or its allies in the Arctic will be viewed through a security lens in Moscow. Canada understands this, which is why Ottawa treads carefully even when pressure builds to move faster or act tougher. China's role adds yet another layer. While not geographically Arctic, Beijing's investments, research stations, and shipping ambitions are reshaping how Arctic states are defined. Canada has been cautious, watching closely without escalating rhetoric. But silence is not the same as strategy, and critics argue Canada needs a clearer long-term Arctic vision that accounts for all major players, not just traditional allies. Perhaps the most important and least discussed factor is public awareness. For many Canadians, the Arctic still feels distant. Southern cities dominate political debate, while northern realities rarely break into national headlines unless there's a crisis. That gap in awareness makes it harder for governments to justify major Arctic spending or bold policy shifts. Yet the Arctic is not separate from Canada's future, it's central to it. Economically, the stakes are enormous. New shipping routes could reshape global trade. Natural resources could attract massive investment. But without strong governance, economic opportunity can quickly turn into environmental damage and social disruption. Canada is trying to position itself as a responsible gatekeeper, open to development but firm on standards. Whether that position holds under global pressure remains an open question. The next few years will likely bring more headlines about Arctic patrols, defense upgrades, diplomatic statements, and quiet negotiations behind closed doors. Greenland will keep appearing in conversations, not because Canada wants control over it, but because what happens there signals how power will be exercised across the entire Arctic region. In the end, this isn't about fear, it's about readiness. Canada doesn't need to dominate the Arctic, but it does need to defend its interests clearly and confidently. The era when geography alone guaranteed security is over. Influence now belongs to those who show up, plan ahead, and act consistently. If you've watched this far, thank you. I genuinely appreciate your time and trust. If you want more deep, no-noise breakdowns on Canada's role in global politics, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this story. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Canada is doing enough to protect its Arctic future, or is it moving too slowly? Should Canada take a stronger stance or keep prioritizing diplomacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.